Hey everybody, Ross here, and this is Bible Study Superstar. If this is your first time on this channel, click here to go back to the intro, or if you'd rather see what's been going on recently, click here to go back to Genesis 42. Now, without further ado, I'm just going to jump right on into Genesis 43, verse 1. Now the famine was severe in the land, and it came to pass, when they had eaten up the grain which they had brought from Egypt, that their father said to them, Go back, buy us a little food. But Judah spoke to him, saying, The man solemnly warned us, saying, You shall not see my face, unless your brother is with you. If you send our brother with us, we will go down and buy food for you. But if you will not send him, we will not go down. For the man said to us, You shall not see my face, unless your brother is with you. And Israel said, Why did you deal so wrongfully with me, as to tell the man whether you still had another brother? But they said, The man asked us pointedly about ourselves and our family, saying, Is your father still alive? Have you another brother? And we told him according to these words. Could we possibly have known that he would say, Bring your brother down? Then Judah said to Israel his father, Send a lad with me, and we will arise and go, that we may live and not die, both we and you, and also our little ones. I myself will be surety for him. From my hand you shall require him. If I do not bring him back to you and set him before you, then let me bear the blame forever. For if we had not lingered, surely by now we would have returned the second time. And their father Israel said to them, If it must be so, then do this. Take some of the best fruits in the land in your vessels, and carry down a present for the man, a little balm and a little honey, spices and myrrh, pistachio nuts and almonds. Take double money in your hand, and take back in your hand the money that was returned in the mouth of your sacks. Perhaps it was an oversight. Take your brother also, and arise, go back to the man. And may God Almighty give you mercy before the man, that he may release your other brother and Benjamin. If I am bereaved, I am bereaved. So the men took that present and Benjamin, and they took double money in their hand, and arose and went down to Egypt. And they stood before Joseph. When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the steward of his house, Take these men to my home, and slaughter an animal, and make ready, for these men will dine with me at noon. Then the man did as Joseph ordered, and the man brought the men into Joseph's house. Now the men were afraid, because they were brought into Joseph's house, and they said, It is because of the money which was returned in our sacks the first time that we are brought in, so that he may make a case against us and seize us to take us as slaves with our donkeys. When they drew near to the steward of Joseph's house, he talked to them at the door of the house, and said, O sir, we indeed came down the first time to buy food. But it happened, when we came to the encampment, that we opened our sacks, and there each man's money was in the mouth of his sack, our money in full weight. So we have brought it back in our hand, and we have brought down other money in our hands to buy food. We did not know who put our money in our sacks. But he said, Peace be with you, do not be afraid. Your God and the God of your father has given you treasure in your sacks. I had your money. Then he brought Simeon out to them. So the man brought the men into Joseph's house, and gave them water, and they washed their feet, and gave their donkeys feed. Then they made the present ready for Joseph's coming at noon, for they heard that they would eat bread there. And when Joseph came home, they brought him the present which was in their hand into the house, and bowed down before him to the earth. Then he asked them about their well-being, and said, "Is your father well? The old man of whom you spoke, is he still alive?" And they answered, "Your servant our father is in good health. He is still alive." And they bowed their heads down and prostrated themselves. Then he lifted his eyes and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, and said, "Is this your younger brother, of whom you spoke to me?" And he said, "God be gracious to you, my son." Now his heart yearned for his brother, so Joseph made haste and sought somewhere to weep. And he went into his chamber and wept there. Then he washed his face and came out and restrained themselves and said, "Serve the bread." So they set him a place by himself, and them by themselves. And the Egyptians who ate with him by themselves, because Egyptians could not eat food with the Hebrews, for that is an abomination to the Egyptians. And they sat before him, the firstborn according to his birthright, and the youngest according to his youth. And the men looked in astonishment at one another. Then he took servants to them from before him, but Benjamin's servant was 5 times as large as any of theirs. So they drank and were merry with him. Alright, Jacob must have been getting desperate for food when we start this chapter, as he tells his sons to go buy more grain in Egypt, knowing full well that would require Benjamin to go as well. Still, he seems reluctant to let him go. After being reminded of Benjamin's need to also go to Egypt, which Jacob, again, probably already knew, he asks why in the world brothers mention Benjamin to begin with. The response in verse 7 illuminates Joseph's desire for information about his family. We were not fully shown this desire in their initial meeting because we were not made aware that all of these questions were even asked. Now, Judah offers a similar promise of protection over Benjamin to Reuben, but with some key differences that could have made Jacob more willing to accept. Number 1, the situation was now much more dire than before. Instead of just Simeon and Benjamin being at risk, the entire family is now looking at the possibility of starvation, including all of their servants and livestock. And number 2, Judah's offer places the consequences of failure solely on himself, instead of unjustly making his children suffer with him, as Reuben suggested in his own offer. Now, when Jacob does reluctantly agree to what must be done, he goes a few steps further by having the brothers prepare a gift, as well as return the money that was in their sacks from the first purchase. Then he prays that God will give the brothers favor in their efforts, not knowing that God, in his providence, already had. Then immediately after, he makes the negative comment of, "If I am bereaved, I am bereaved." Despite his trust in God, it looks like Jacob has become jaded and cynical as the years went by. Upon their arrival to buy grain, Joseph notices them and has them brought to his house for a meal. There he could more personally and privately interact with his brothers. Before the brothers knew that they were going to Joseph's house for a meal, we know they were afraid, thinking that they would be arrested and enslaved for the missing money from their first purchase. when they went to enter Joseph's house, they made sure to explain the returned money and insist their ignorance on how it happened. Joseph's steward answered by saying that God had given them the money because he had handled theirs personally. This exchange shows a few things. Number one, Joseph's steward was either a believer in God, likely from Joseph's influence, or Joseph had instructed his steward on how to speak to his brothers. Either way, the brothers seem to have completely missed the mention of their God by a possible pagan. Number two, either the steward completely missed the brothers' money was missing, or Joseph paid their debt without the steward noticing. Considering Joseph's character, the latter is likely the case. And number three, Joseph's steward may have been in on the whole thing. It must have been quite the surprise to find out that instead of being arrested and enslaved, they would be sharing a meal with Joseph. And finally, when Joseph arrives at noon, he seems to drop a lot of clues that the brothers never pick up on. First, he asks about their well-being and the well-being of Jacob. This is purely speculation, but it seems logical to assume that a person in Joseph's position would rarely do something like that without personally knowing the people he was addressing. Next, he blesses Benjamin in God's name. Again, it sort of alerted them that they were not in normal Egypt's company. Finally, he honored them all by giving them portions of his own superior food, and Benjamin specifically by giving him a portion 5 times as large as his brothers. They're completely missing everything now, but they'll see soon enough. And that's all I have for today. Thanks for watching. If you have any comments, feedback, or suggestions, leave them down below in a video response or in comments. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you all soon in Genesis 44.